Did Dying Light 2 fail? I know for some those are fighting words based off immeasurable stupidity. Look at Steam, Metacritic, YouTube comments, Techland's Accolade trailer, or hell, even IGN's review. As I say, when in doubt, push a 7 out, while ignoring the dev's advice on not speaking of bugs until the day 1 patch. But let me be frank here, while I am a huge fan of this game, I have almost 80 hours across 3 different saves on PC, 35 hours across 2 different saves on PlayStation 5, and 15 or so hours on Xbox. Yes, I bought the game 3 times. If that doesn't show I love this game and support Techland for the long haul, I don't know what does. Maybe I'd have to launch a hot tub stream over on Twitch and put Techland on my daddy board, just to show how committed I am to this relationship, no matter how many save files their game is corrupted. As a fan, I believe you have the right to criticize the thing you like, more so than anyone else. You have invested the time, money, and to a degree, whether you accept it or not, you're emotionally invested as well. I mean, if your save got corrupted, co-op won't work, or even if the game wasn't what you'd expected with things taken out, removed, or changed, especially if they were at the forefront of the game's marketing, you'd get pissed too, wouldn't you? But let's go back to that opening statement. Did Dying Light 2 fail? Let me tell you what I mean by that, because I'm not talking in terms of sales, player count, or how the game runs on my jet engine of a PlayStation 4. What I'm talking is in game direction and execution of what was initially shown versus what we have now. So a more accurate statement would be, was Dying Light 2 a little too ambitious for its own good? Back when it was originally announced, Techland really pushed the whole your choice mattered, with the world reacting drastically to your choices and decisions, showing their intentions of building a stronger story this time around with a world that's ironically more alive and responsive to what you do and what factions within the city you side with. We've seen glimpses of peacekeepers forcing what looks like civilians to submit to their will, carry out public executions and announcements with harsh rules and even harsher punishments for those that disobeyed. And they even appeared to patrol the streets in large numbers, giving this combined feeling of regret and oppression drop down on the city and its inhabitants because you decided to go with those that craved law and order whatever the cost. Interestingly, when they're showcasing this, they don't have the option of siding with survivors yet. At least they don't call them anything specifically, but instead of going with the peacekeepers, you have the option to sell the water in the black market, bringing in more bandits into the area, giving the region a sense of heightened danger from multiple bandits roaming the streets than just the PKs. But on the flip side, it seems like the player's in a better position because obviously he's the one controlling the water. But I digress. With the omission of the survivors and the whole concept of putting the water in the black market, which I don't even think is in the game, this could mean that the narrative at this point in time was in the very early stages. Or it could have been just Techland showcasing the new system in this game and how reactive the world is really meant to be. But the fact that they talked about the peacekeepers and basically, for the most part, kept the visual design and how they conduct themselves from this trailer to the final product, but there's no mention of the survivors whatsoever, makes me personally think it was because the story wasn't fully fleshed out yet. The peacekeepers' opposites weren't properly defined, or this whole thing was just a press kit put together to show off one faction and the new city alignment system the game was meant to have in place. But obviously they didn't stop there. In an extended gameplay trailer that's been tough to find besides this clip right here, we get an idea of how dark zones were intended to work. These absolute death sentences during the day had entire hordes of infected bunched up, sleeping in the darkness. Strong I Am Legend influences here. In the clip, the player jumps on top of a chandelier which falls, waking everything inside, forcing them to run out of the building with some of the infected slowly following behind. Obviously dark zones don't look like this. The concept, like the city alignment system, is still there, but it's not the same. In the retail build, dark zones still have sleeping biters, a lot fewer in number than what the trailer showed. The closest that I can recall to this amount of sleeping biters in the full game anyways is in the prologue when you're running to the radio tower to speak with Spike's informant. But we also get virals that are aimlessly walking back and forth inside the dark zones. I don't believe any of the infected can follow you out of the building, at least not one similar to the trailer where you gotta slide underneath the table. In other dark zones like this, it seems to only have one entrance and one exit, and none of the infected can follow you underneath that table. But in these earlier showcases of the game, we see what appears to be stronger, more drastic impact to the world, its environment, and inhabitants based off player choices. Dark zones being seemingly much more dangerous, especially during the day, along with an art direction that seemed much more darker and gritty than the vibrant colored world that we have now, and the possibility of long-range weapons that doubled as melee weapon, the Scorpio, a badass weapon that was Thanos snapped out of everyone's mind when they realized the game had a fucking bicycle. But I get game direction and things change over the development of a game. Some things become too demanding, system intensive, repetitive or just don't work well with other things the team has in mind. It could also boil down to the lack of time on the dev side, forcing ideas to be cut or saved for DLC. But it's also hard to not bring into account the rumors surrounding Techland and this game's development. Dying Light 2 is delayed a handful of times and almost for the entire year of 2020, actually I think it was the entire year, we got zero new information on how the game was going. Our updates came from, well, the announcement that it was indefinitely delayed, followed by rumors of lack of direction, the game being in a generally poor state, Techland quote-unquote bleeding talent after rough development, and then we got the sexual allegations surrounding Chris Avalon, forcing Techland to swiftly end all cooperation with them and having to put out a release to squash all the horrible rumors. And what adds a little bit to my confusion here is when the game launched, Chris clarified on Twitter that he worked on 5 to 6 story drafts similar to New Vegas, saying the number of quests were easily over 100 without counting replayability and branching out based off the city alignment system, that his drafts had less dialogue but were more heavy on the system reaction and world changing, but it was Techland that wanted something more internally developed, and ultimately it looks like none of his work made it into the final game, meaning he was really a consultant all along, and makes me question why he was the one to reveal the game back at E3 and not Timon Smektala, the lead game designer at Techland. And that would also mean what we see in early trailers are most likely Chris's idea and hard work at play here, and therefore would have made what we see here drastically different than what we got at release. I'm really curious how many different revisions the game went through. It's an absolute miracle Dying Light 2 is ever able to get out of development and be as fun as it is. When it comes to the bugs and issues, it's kind of hard to say because there's so many people with many different experiences. Some haven't experienced any problems whatsoever, while others can't get out of the death loops or get consistent frame rates even after all the recent updates. I was thinking Dark Zones could definitely get more bodies in there, and the Scorpio can be added into the game at a later date, possibly tied as a weapon you can only find in a new harder difficulty mode. More enemies and infighting between PKs and the survivors or bandits and renegades or any faction between the infected, both during the day and at night on the streets in the future updates can be implemented as well. I mean, it's all feasible, but it makes me wonder if the game is too intense to pull it off. I don't think it was capable at launch. I don't know if it's an optimization issue or what, but at launch, having that many bodies in a dark zone or double the infected on the streets, I don't think the game would have been able to handle it and run that well. It's much smoother now, but I think it's still an update or two away from being perfect. And while I sadly don't think the game would ever get to this level of alteration as promised, I do believe Dying Light 2's core gameplay and what we do have with the city alignment system is more than enough to keep people busy for years to come. But that's what I think about all this. Do I think Dying Light 2 is too ambitious for its own good? I think Techland was in a position where excitement and passion got the better of them, and they began to bite off a bit more than they can chew. As they say, too many options can cripple a person, and with so much being pushed with the sequel, they had to scale a few things back, and now, unfortunately, they're playing catch up with some features, fixing other problems that really should have been dealt with during the game's final year of development, and are even starting to tweak the music a little bit, which is kind of cool. I don't know exactly how I feel about it, given that people are having problems, but it's neat seeing tweaks like that being brought in, I guess. But let me know what you think. How's the game for you? How do you think the game would have been if Chris's work played a more significant role in development and ultimately carried the bulk of Dying Light 2, at least in terms of its alignment system? Would you love to see Dark Zones be more along the lines of what we got back in 2018, or are they fine perfectly how they are now? Let's talk down in the comments section. But like always, guys, my name is Cynic. Thank you all so much for watching. Special shout out to my patrons, Woodcrafted Essentials, DJ Steph, and of course Grim Reaper. The content I produce would not be possible without the three of you, so big special thank you to you guys. And if you guys haven't joined the Discord yet and you're looking for people to play Elden Ring or Dying Light 2 or just chat video games in general, feel free to join the Discord. Link is always down in the pinned comment. We're just shy of 3,000 members, so feel free to join. Help us hit that incredible milestone. But until next time, I'll see y'all later.